Test 1, 2, 3. Hello and welcome to the Waste Management Subcommittee meeting of February 12th, 2024. I would like to call our meeting to order. We do have a bit of a new membership today. So on our committee, I'm acting as your chair today. I'm your vice chair, Alex Wilson. Also on the committee, we have Councillor Taddison here today, Kevin Hunt, Peter Hargreave, Heather Govinder, and Lori Nielsen. I don't think Lori's with us just yet. And hello, Heather on the screen. I don't think have the biggest of agendas today. And given that we have a new meeting, I'm just kind of going to go over some of what I found pretty helpful when kind of onboarding into city committees and things like that is typically we'll have a report or we'll have a presentation or there'll be staff speaking to an item that's on our agenda, and then we'll go into a bit of a discussion afterwards. Generally at the city, we do discussion through the chair. That's me today, pretty informal, just here to make sure that we can get through the conversations. Yeah, and we have some staff reports and then we have one discussion item. And hello, Lori. Yeah, with that, unless there's any questions or we want to do kind of any housekeeping, onboarding, admin work, the first item on our agenda today is to approve our agenda. Just kind of looking around, especially for our newer folks, happy to kind of take a pause before we get into the formal pieces, but has everyone had a chance to see our agenda? We're feeling good about approving that, having the meeting as laid out? So then, Heather, are you able to help us out maybe by moving that agenda approval? And Kevin, are you okay to second that? Here we are. And if no one has any concerns, why don't we vote on that? And so through you, clerk, you're just looking for thumbs? Perfect. So are we good to go with this agenda as it's been circulated? Moved by Lori, seconded by Kevin, moved by Heather, seconded by Kevin, seeing 5 thumbs up. Okay, I'm gonna say that passes 5-0, 6-0. There we go, I can count. Okay. So we've passed our agenda. There wasn't any discussion on the agenda. Are there any conflicts of interest? If you have any questions about the conflict of interest policy, we're happy to kind of get through that. Again, we're just kind of doing this a little bit slower because it's our first meeting today. These typically go pretty fast. Not anticipating many folks would have conflicts unless you have financial interests. So I think we're good there. Just going to give anyone a moment to declare any conflicts. I'm not seeing any. So with that, I'm going to then look to someone who's there, Councillor Taddison. And Kevin, are you able to move and second our minutes? Sure. Perfect. Those have been moved and seconded. Does anyone have any questions about the minutes? Any discussion on the minutes? No, not seeing any. So I'm going to ask for a vote on our minutes. Again, that's just a thumbs up or a hand. Heather, if you're online, and folks in the room. And I'm saying that passes 6-0. Thank you, everyone. So we've got through kind of the beginning of our meeting, and this is the bit where I get to stop talking and throw it over to staff. We do have 7 staff presentations. They're generally shorter and then kind of merged together. So excited to call on Angela Story, Director of Waste Management, to begin the presentation. Thanks, Angela.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. So in the spirit of it being the kind of our first meeting of 2024, and we do have some new faces around the table that we want to welcome, we also have kind of taken this opportunity in our presentation list today to make them not introductory, but not super heavy. We have another meeting already scheduled. I believe that is in May. And we have some kind of, bigger items that we maybe want to talk about at that meeting and get you to weigh in on them. So the first couple of items I'm going to speak to, and as you can see here, the first one is just related to asset management planning. And so it is not our asset management plan. However, as you'll see in the notes, the asset management plan from our corporate asset management group in the city, they brought the waste management current level of service asset management plan to City Council in December. So when we look at this is based on a regulation from the provincial government. And so you'll see in 2019, the city had to establish an asset management policy. They did that. In 2022, they had to bring forward all of the asset management plans for the current level of service for our core assets. And those core assets are transportation related and water works related. And then in 2024, we have to meet the next deadline, which is establishing asset management plan for non-core assets. So the functions and assets that we have in the Waste Management Division are considered non-core assets to the City of Hamilton. That is due in July 2024, but we did have that group and our team supported that. You'll see in the next slides, we brought that forward in December. What we're working towards, which you'll see on the far right there, is in July of 2025, we have to have our next version of the asset management plan, which is related to our proposed level of service. So you'll see how some of the other projects that we're working on in the division are lining up so that they'll meet that target of the July 2025 date. We're just going to the next slide here. Great. So where we've been. So again, to meet the timelines on the prior slide, we've had to make a number of steps. So we did have cross-departmental working groups between corporate asset management and ourselves. Staff participated in mandatory training related to asset management and completed tasks to utilize the preparation of the asset management plan for waste. And I'll just cover lightly, won't read all the information on the screen. There's 2 slides here that just says what's in a plan. So in an asset management plan is some background and registry information. We talk about life cycles of the assets that we have. We talk about demand, so who are the users of our service and what pressures do we face? And we need to incorporate climate change and how climate change may affect how we manage our assets. And then on the next slide, we talk about risk management in the plan. So what are our risks if we don't do certain things? What are the level of service? In waste, you can sort of think it's pretty easy to well, right now we pick up waste weekly. So that would be considered a level of service. So under the plan and utilizing our assets, are there level of service changes that might be presented? What is the financial plan? So what is our financial health? And do we have the funding that we require to be able to maintain our assets and our levels of service going into the future? And finally, as with most projects we do today, we talk about continuous improvement. So are there any opportunities just to make things better, make things more efficient, et cetera? And then on here, this is just the final slide of this part of the presentation, just talking about the next steps, thinking back to that first slide. So we did, with our corporate asset management group, our presentation and our plan was presented to GIC in December. You'll see in brackets there on the first bullet, as the corporate asset management group has multiple plans complete, they'll bring them forward. So when it was presented in December, it was waste, it was the Hamilton Police Service, and it was also parking. After the approval of the asset management plan from council, corporate asset management is going to begin to work with us on the identified continuous improvement items that you'll see in that plan. Asset management is a journey. We always try to remember that, and each iteration is meant to improve how we do our business. Plans are intended to be updated regularly. So even though our current level of service asset management plan that came forward in December, it says here's where we are today, the goal is to not stop there. The goal is to continuously look at it, and now that we have a pretty robust asset management group in the city now, we lean on them so that we meet those timelines and we're doing what we need to do to help support it. We want to better understand life cycle needs, of course. We want to update the asset management plans for that July 1st, 2025 deadline, which is in the last bullet there. Corporate asset management is working with us to align the future level of service to our solid waste management master plan. So those that have been in these meetings in the last year have been getting updates, and you'll get an update today on where we stand on our next 20 to 25 year solid waste management master plan, but we know we can't do that in a vacuum either. So we really need to meet the deadlines for its release and work and implementation so that it meets the asset management plan as well. And Ryan will give an update on the master plan a little bit later. Did you want to do questions as we go?
Yeah, so we have about 7 presentations. I think this is one of the longer ones today. So if we're okay to kind of do those stop and thinks throughout, or like if people have questions, if we don't have questions, we'll just move to the next one, but I'm seeing some questions already. Thank you.
Just a quick question, and apologies if this is a dumb question, because I ask a lot of them. Sorry, when we're talking about assets, what does that include? So that includes, I would assume, landfill, compost facility, like the major capital side. Does it include the rolling stock? Like, what is it confined to?
Yeah, thanks, Peter, through the chair. So in the plan that we have now, big capital items like our actual transfer stations, our gas wells at the landfill site, things like that would be considered our big assets. The actual collection vehicles and our pickup trucks that we have to utilize the service. We'll be including, we don't have them today, but as part of this plan, all of our litter containers that are street side will be considered assets. But things like our promotion and education material, that stuff would be inventory of supplies as opposed to actual assets on that. But what we're hoping to do is, whether it's a box of brochures or a transfer station, big, we want to make sure we're employing the same principles to keep things up to date, to keep things current, to keep records of them, so we know when to reorder things, et cetera. So we want to apply the same principles from the plan to those.
Just if I may, one follow-up. On the asset side, does the City of Hamilton currently use development charges as a way to fund any of that infrastructure, or?
Yeah, so through the chair, in waste management, the only thing we have development charges for today are our diversion containers. So if we have X is our budget for diversion containers, 10% of that is covered by development charges today, Peter. Joel McCormick, our manager of collections, he is our representative on the development charge study master planning group, and so we keep our faces there to ensure that we're not forgotten when we're going through those development charge meetings. And I just wanted to also mention, next meeting, we have the asset management team is actually going to come and present the asset management plan from December, so that we have a good understanding of that. But for today, we just wanted to introduce it.
I see Kevin and then Councillor Tattison, if you're okay, Peter. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, through the chair, as far as assets, so the Mountain Transfer Station has the recycle store. Is that considered part of us or a private business?
Yeah, through the chair, the reuse store at the Mountain Transfer Station Community Recycling Center is a city asset. It's just subcontracted through the folks that operate the transfer station. They're required to have a subcontractor run that store.
And it looks like you got Councillor Tattison's question, maybe. I'm getting the signal that we're good. Heather, any questions on the screen? And sorry if I miss you, I'm just looking back and forth. Not seeing any. If they come up, we're happy to go back. It's looser at the subcommittee level. Oh, and then maybe a quick comment from Councillor Tattison, then we'll do the next presentation.
Just I'm looking forward to the detailed presentation on the assets, because I'm still struggling to find out what a remaining asset is as compared to the core assets. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, everyone. And yeah, let's do 7.2. Thank you.
All right, so through the chair again, Angela Story, Director of Waste Management. So what we wanted to do today, again, given that it's our first meeting of the year, and we've been working really hard with our verifying our tonnages from our software for what our program looked like compared to 2022. So this PowerPoint slide here shows what our final tonnage totals are for 2023. So you'll see in 2023, our waste diversion rate has ended up at 43.5%, which is positively increased by 0.7% over 2022. You'll see that our landfill tons of garbage went down by 1.3%. Our green bin material, our organics that goes to the composting facility down on Burlington Street increased by 2.6%. That's a positive increase that we're looking at there. Recycling tons did go down by 2.3%. That could be related to, more people have gone back to the office, so there's less kind of generation at home. We also have seen with recycling materials in the past number of years, light weighting, just different recyclable materials just weigh a little bit less than they used to. So because we do measure in weight for our recyclables, it could be attributed to that as well. And yard waste, it was a pretty big year for yard waste. So we increased by 5.5%. It was mostly because there was not that hot, dry summer that kind of stopped things from growing. So in Joel McCormick's area in collections, they didn't really have many low yard waste weeks. And this is just a trend of the diversion rates over the last few years, so as not to just say here was 2023 compared to 2022, but you can definitely see since 2019, the diversion rate has been going in a positive direction, being as low as just over 40.5%, and now it's up to 43.5%. So we're happy with that positive change.
And if folks have any questions on diversion, Peter.
I'm the worst, I'm sorry. Just a couple of questions. So what is the target right now for residential waste diversion? What is our goal that was set, 10 years ago?
Through the chair, our KPI actually is just to be higher than the year before. You'll recall way back in the mid-2000s when the first solid waste management master plan was released, there was a lofty goal of 65%. It was just a really giant bite to be able to handle. So what we'll be looking at in the next master plan again is always looking at our metrics, determining our targets. But for right now, Peter, the diversion rate target year over year is we're just hopeful that it goes up.
Just a couple of additional follow-ups. Just on waste generation side, how is the numbers trending? So I know we've got the diversion number, but how are the generation numbers trending as compared?
Yeah, through the chair, we had it in our budget presentation, so we don't have it here, but overall waste this year, I think it went from 227,000 tons to 225-ish thousand tons. So it has gone down a little bit when you take all of those other factors into consideration. And we do, since 2020 when people were really home, we did see a spike in basement cleanups, garage cleanups, a lot more yard waste, that kind of stuff. And since then, we've started to see that regular decrease kind of back to those more normal levels.
Sorry, go ahead, Lori.
So the increase in the organics could also be account for the decrease in the recycling because people are using more compostable things as well?
Yeah, through the chair, that's definitely a possibility. We also, again, we did have, towards the end of the year, pumpkins play a big role in our organics program. We do advertise right now because we do have that 20,000 ton cap at our composting facility. So you would have seen we were at 19,800 this year. We don't want to hit 20,000, go over 20,000 because that could possibly have to be landfilled or sent elsewhere. So we do direct pumpkins to yard waste right now, but it's we definitely get a lot of pumpkins, and because we do it by weight, it does impact that as well.
I just know at the Lancaster Fair that we got a lot more in the organics and then less in the recycling.
Yeah, through the chair, we do have some organics regulation changes that are coming over the next few years. So we are hopeful to get those programs in place so that we can accept more organics at our facility, and then, full steam ahead on the education program and ensuring that they go in the right spot.
I did have another question, but I didn't write it down, so I can't remember.
Just one additional follow-up if I can. Non-residential waste, how is it or is it monitored? Do we track that side of things? Because I'm assuming it may impact our landfill projections.
Sure. Through the chair, Ryan Kent, Manager of Waste Policy and Planning. So if you're talking strictly about what's at the transfer stations, that number, I believe, is trending down. I would say that our knowledge of what we're collecting at the curb from businesses is a little bit more difficult to track. But definitely at the transfer stations where we know it and we have a good idea of the tonnages coming in, it is decreased from the year before. But I can provide more detailed information at a later date.
Okay, through the chair, I have another question. So right now we're looking at actual tonnage. Knowing that population is changing and the city is growing, are we thinking possibly of changing the KPI in the future, just in case to do it, say, per building or per person? Just because if your tonnage goes up and your city grows, and your ratio might be getting better, but it might look bad. Eh? So.
Yeah, through the chair. So we did look at that as one of the master plan action items from the last version. What we did look at was new metrics and new ways of measuring success in the program. So one, we obviously have waste diversion. Waste diversion is a very common one that we've used. We've selected some other metrics. I did present on it one of the meetings last year, but one of the metrics we want to focus on is the amount of organics that we capture, like the capture rate of organics, both in single family and multi-residential buildings. And that's one of the ones that we're going to work on. But for those targets, we've also mentioned that as part of the master plan process, and Angela mentioned it as well with the diversion rate, that we want to relook at that and make sure that our targets, what we've come up with, make sense, as well as the metrics. So part of the activity of selecting what metrics to use is us as staff reviewed somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 different metrics that were used by other municipalities, such as waste generated per capita, waste generated per household, and these different metrics. And we found the ones that we selected, for example, the capture rate of organics, to be one that was probably the most usable metrics that we use moving forward. But we'll provide more information on that at a future meeting when we talk about the metrics as part of the larger discussion for the master plan. Yeah.
Any other questions on diversion? I have one. Just on getting into this exactly with metrics and capture rates. Am I correct in just confirming? So a capture rate is, say, what fraction of organics did we get into an organics or a green bin of all of the organics that are collected in the city? So it's a fraction of total, that's a capture rate, is essentially how much did you get in the right spot of the total piece of the pie?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. So if we had theoretically 100 tons of organics that was generated in the city and 50 tons went in the garbage and 50 tons went in a green bin, it's a 50% capture rate. Yeah, exactly.
And flipping that, a diversion rate is, hey, we've reduced, 40% of, say, when we interpret our solid waste, 40% of that diversion, those are things that could be going other places that we successfully got other places, but 100, I guess what I'm saying is 100% diversion is not 0 pounds of litter in the landfill, it's just 0 pounds of organics or recycling, or just trying to.
So through the chair,
Yeah.
100% diversion rate, I would say, would be an impossible goal, because that would mean that everything that you're creating is divertible.
So this is it, is, okay, so it's not, thank you, that does help. So it's not based on it is based on where things could go, rather. And so if we have things that are not circular, have to have waste as an end result, that's always going to be in that kind of percentage we're trying to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Right now it's at 57-ish%.
Yeah. So the important thing to remember about diversion is it's all weight-based. And so, as Angela was talking about light weighting, if you have less newspaper that's heavy, and that's obviously going to negatively impact your diversion rate, even if you're capturing 100% of all the paper, because it's very driven by weight, right? So its diversion rate is the percentage of material that we actually divert from the landfill out of everything that we create. Yeah.
Thank you. And so just wondering, as we embark on our next plan, we have our KPIs, we're now kind of all in the same definitions about what those different types of rates are. What data do we have right now in terms of capture rates of different types of things? Understanding organics capture is something we're looking for, so we can better understand if we want to increase our diversion. Is it recycling capture we have to work on? Is it organics capture we have to work on? Is it about, hey, there's this one product that's just taken up so much space in the landfill. Can we work upstream with producers to say, stop making this? we need a different solution here. How do we, like, obviously that's the journey we're walking on with our solid waste management master plan. I guess I'm wondering, where are we today in that, and what are some of those data that we have, and where do we think those next steps are in terms of diversion and in terms of big categories or the future of diversion?
So through the chair, I would say one important piece of data we have are the waste composition studies, or waste audits, that we carry out on both single-family and multi-residential buildings, which is important because it tells us, for example, and I actually will be talking about organics in a couple of slides that are capture rate there. It will tell us that we're not where we are for the capture rate of those. And we can make those waste composition studies more specific based on material. So that's important. When we're talking about diversion rate in the future, what we should be looking at is what are maybe new programs, especially if we're not handling the Blue Box program in the future. What are the new emerging markets that we should be looking at, that we should be diverting waste with those new programs? So it definitely will be part of that larger conversation, and what one of those emerging markets or we want to, for example, take advantage of. But we will have that conversation for sure.
No, thank you, really appreciate that. And I know, for example, one of the areas we've already said we want to skill up in is in building waste. So construction, deconstruction, recycle, and that's kind of a priority in our existing plan. So just kind of trying to think about what's the data that's informing those other future directions, much like we already have next steps baked into our existing plan. I'll get off the list here, and then I think maybe, no, okay.
I was just going to suggest I'll chair.
Thanks. I think we're good for 7.3. Good point. Yeah, good point.
Good catch.
All right, I will move along to item 7.3, which is the 2024-2025 Waste Management Guide. So for all the members that are here today, you would see that before the meeting, I've provided you each with one of these waste management guides that we just got printed last week for your early viewing enjoyment. So a couple of notes on this year's version of the Waste Management Guide. It has been reduced from a 36-page calendar to an 8-page fold-out, so a little bit different than what we've had in the past. This particular change was made this year because to reduce the impact of the calendar on the operating budget, which some of you may be aware of that process. So there was a savings of approximately $40,000 to reduce this from the old calendar version to the new waste management guide that we, waste and recycling guide that we have. For you to, in case you have any constituents that ask, the guides should be received by March 8th. They will continue to include 12 garbage tags, and this year those trash tags will be green in color. So this is a pretty short presentation item, so it was basically just to let you know so that you are aware of it. I would say just one quick item in there. You will see that there is a part of the waste recycling guide that speaks to a page on the website, a new page on the website about Blue Box transition. That will be running by the time the calendar is in people's hands, but we're working on it right now. It should be up and running by next week. So in case you do look at it today or tomorrow, it isn't up right now, we know that, but it will be up and running by the time the waste management guide is in the hands of residents. Happy to take any questions on that. Seeing none. Okay. Then I will move along to our green bin participation study, item 7.4. So to give the subcommittee a little bit of background on this particular piece, we've already been talking about waste composition studies. So the first item background piece on this is the most recent single-family waste composition study that staff did for the city of Hamilton in 2022. And that showed that we had about a 43.5% capture rate of a green bin material from Hamilton residents. Looking at comparable municipalities, they have capture rates about 55 to 61%. So we could definitely see that we're lower than a lot of the other municipalities that are comparable to the city of Hamilton. The second background piece is in regards to the solid waste management master plan, the current one that we have. That master plan has several guiding principles, the second of which is the Glanbrook landfill is a valuable resource, and the city must optimize the use of its disposal capacity to ensure that there is a disposal site for Hamilton's residual materials that cannot be otherwise diverted. So basically saying that we want to divert waste as much as possible to keep the landfill from filling up too quickly, and that obviously includes organic waste. And I'll just mention the third background piece here is about the provincial food and organic waste policy statement, which currently for the city of Hamilton does have a capture rate target of 70% for organics. That does include yard waste, but based on our numbers, even when you combine it with the 43.5% and our very high yard waste capture rate, we are still falling behind that target by about 5%. So that's a background piece on this. What we decided when we were going into this green bin participation study, our objectives were to identify causes and barriers that prevent individuals from participating in the city's green bin program. We wanted to identify what would assist or motivate residents to participate. And we wanted to gather feedback on insights and development recommendations to increase the participation rates, address the barriers, and improve the program effectiveness. Once staff determined that that's really what we wanted to get a better handle on so we could move forward, we came up with the following methodology, which staff decided the best route to go down was focus groups so we could get more in-depth information from residents. So we had 3 in-person and 3 virtual focus groups with a total of 54 participants. We broke these down into 3 different groups, 1 not knowledgeable for the green bin program, somewhat knowledgeable, and then very knowledgeable. These focus groups concluded in October of 2023. Moving along to the results, respondents had accurate knowledge of the program, so they understood that yard waste couldn't included in the green bin, for example. They did speak about the most common sources of program information, those being the website. However, some had differing views on how easy it was to use. The waste app, who all that were using it said it was relatively easy. Our waste calendar, which we've already spoken about a little bit today. Other people, such as neighbors and relatives. And then the information that's actually provided on the bins. That's hot stamped on there. So after we talked and basically gauged their understanding of the program, participants were able to give the recommendations as to what they thought would work to increase participation in the green bin program. And this is broken down in a few different areas. The first was about more detailed information. The first being they wanted more information on the actual composting process and the operations. So what happens to the material, how is it composted, and these types of things. The second was the results of the program. So where does the compost go actually after it's processed? Are there costs versus benefits? What are those? Who gets the compost? And then they wanted to know differences between green bin and yard waste because there was some confusion about that. A good example is we have compost giveaways, and most of the residents were unaware that that strictly came from the yard waste as opposed to the green bin material. They wanted staff to make the program participation easier by providing compostable kitchen bin liners, which is required in our program currently, providing green bins with locks, and providing smaller green bins. So in a lot of the city, we still have larger green bins because when the program did roll out, yard waste and green bin material was combined, which is no longer the case. They also asked for school education, focusing on children that can bring home information to their parents. Continuing with the recommendations, they thought that it was important that we provide incentives and disincentives to motivate participation. And many different examples were given for this, but one was, for example, giving top participants some sort of a reward. Some people mentioned we have a pretty successful gold box program for the recycling. Some mentioned that for a green bin program. And then even perhaps having competition between municipalities or communities within Hamilton. Additionally, they also, which was interesting because these were single-family homes, improve access for buildings, so multi-residential buildings, hospitality and public event spaces. One that came up was investigate biweekly garbage collection, which might be a motivator for participants to participate more, or residents to participate more in the green bin program. And provide drop-off centers or community bins for residents who have too much organic waste or are concerned about the smell. And the last slide on this particular item is on next steps. So staff will be evaluating all of the participant recommendations. We will develop a plan to increase green bin participation based on those recommendations, including what items can be implemented with our current resources and what would require additional resources. We will provide that, bring that plan back to the Waste Management Subcommittee so that there can be discussion on that and implement items, hopefully this year with current resourcing. Anything that requires additional, so for example, budget asks, that will go through the next budget process if that is something that has to happen. And then monitor impact with waste composition studies. So in 2025, that's when the next single-family waste composition studies will be done. And so we will move forward and make sure that we obviously monitor if there are any changes in relation to this new program. So I'll pause there. That's the last item I had on the green bin participation study, if there are any questions.
Okay, through the chair, going back to the first slide, you're comparing Hamilton to other municipalities. How do those other municipalities collect pet waste in their organics? Were you able to?
Through the chair, I would say some do, some don't, depending
Okay.
on basically, it's usually driven by how the material is processed.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if that could be one of the reasons we're not as high?
So it's important to remember that what we're talking about here is the capture rate of organics. So the total amount that you could capture versus a tonnage or a weight, right? So even if the important thing is to say that we're doing about 45% capture rate of what is accepted into the green bin, as opposed to all these other materials, if that makes sense. We're talking about percentage of the
Also, you
overall.
weren't going about actual diversion rate, it was capture rate.
This is the capture rate
Okay.
of organics,
Okay.
correct? Yeah.
Have we done a capture rate on the leaf and yard?
Yeah, so through the chair, capture rate on leaf and yard is very, very high. It's a program that most people participate in.
Okay.
It's also not something that people put in garbage, right? So the way you would measure is the amount of organics that are ending up in the garbage or recycling versus what's being captured. Yard waste, it's pretty much, it all goes into the yard waste program. We
Okay.
don't have a lot of it going into other streams, so.
And then Heather, I think you had a question, then we'll go to Mark. Thank you.
I have a question about like what's ending up in the green bins, because we had an increase in the tonnage of green bin waste last year compared to the previous year, which can be really positive if it's because things are ending up in the green bin instead of the landfill, but it also could be a negative if it's if we're throwing away more food that should have been consumed and wasn't. And I know that's really hard to measure, but I'm wondering if you have a sense of how much of the green bin waste was food waste versus food scraps.
So through the chair, we do have a little bit of a sense because we have done a waste audit back in, I believe it was 2021, which was essentially a floor audit of what's come into the CCF to identify what was, I guess you would say, wasted food versus non-wasted food. I would say that the numbers weren't, we only have that 1 year of data, so I wouldn't be able to compare it to another year. But I would say that we are typically what you would find. I wouldn't say that Hamilton was exceptionally higher than other municipalities from that perspective of avoidable versus non-avoidable food waste. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, I think it's good to know just that that you are able to capture that when you go through and do those audits, because I think there's a lot of potential for reduction in all of these areas, because like less compost is a positive if it's because we're wasting less food, and less recyclables is a positive if it's because we're using reusable containers instead of disposable ones. So I guess overall, my point is just I'd love to see more of a focus on waste reduction and not just diversion in all areas.
Thank you for that, Heather. Do you have any other questions right now? No, I've seen you gone on mute. Councillor Tedison and then Peter.
Just want to go back to the first point you made about the 2022 waste composition study of 43.5 capture rate, and it may be related. The comparable municipalities at 55 and 61%. Can you talk a little bit about what were those municipalities and what's the difference between us, and are there different areas in the city that have different capture rates, or is that just one overall combined?
So to answer, through the chair, to answer your first question about what the comparable municipalities were, first of all, we look at municipalities that are relatively larger urban, suburban municipalities as opposed to rural ones. So that would be the first way that we would be looking at a comparable. Your question about, remind me, what was the second question?
That'll put us both on the spot. Just in the sense of like, are there different areas? Like I said, we're 60% rural, 40%,
Right.
urban. Are there different rates between those? Because like for myself, I have a composter at home that we walk out to the back. That's going to affect it. Like, are those counted in that as opposed to not being counted?
So through the chair, we haven't gone to the detail of the waste composition studies to break it down into different parts of the city. It's not something that, not to say that we couldn't do that in the future. Obviously, it impacts, the more detailed you get with a waste composition study, the more comparables and those sorts of things, it can impact costs, but we can certainly look at that for the 2025 one to break it down into those 3 different areas. So I do know that we did try to break it down different household types as opposed to wards, for example. But I will look at that in a little bit more detail for you.
And I'll read the report as well, and that might help me. Thanks.
And through the chair, just to add to that, when we look at other municipalities' diversion rates in general, to the question of are they doing something different than we are, Councillor Wilson did touch on it earlier about emerging markets or different markets that they might have available. So another municipality might have a way to divert concrete waste, and if it's weight-based, then definitely that diversion rate is going to be higher. So when we're looking at the different opportunities, anything that we can take out of the landfill is going to increase our rate as well. So typically when we see through a data call that we have to submit to the province every year, and every municipality has to do that, we'll compare ourselves to our neighboring municipalities or people that have similar programs to us, and we'll try to get into the weeds a little bit about what are they doing differently than we did. Are they biweekly garbage collection? Are they recycling concrete? Do they have diapers and pet waste allowed in the green bin? So different things in that. And it's not so that we can explain away why ours is different, but just so we can explain maybe why they're different from us.
Just, I think the participant recommendations are interesting recommendations. I guess 2 things that I worry about. One is I feel like they speak to a certain part of the population of Hamilton that maybe they don't speak to the full part of Hamilton. So it doesn't appear to me like a lot of these speak to socioeconomic types of considerations, culture barriers, things like that, potentially that may rest differently. I love the gold box type of suggestion, but you're really putting emphasis on people that are already composting or recycling, not people that are not participating at all. And I think the second thing I worry about a little bit in the, I mean, you've got a little bit of it here around investigating biweekly, but I wonder whether some of those comparisons are, with other municipalities, are about the question of not necessarily making it easier to compost materials, but making it more difficult to dispose of materials, creating more of the disincentive on the garbage stream. And one last point was just simply, I know this is more about single family, but I think, Brian, you were working on some pieces around development side. Is there more that's happening on development side to make sure that those buildings have adequate access and storage for these types of materials?
Yeah, so through the chair, for existing new multi-residential buildings, the new design requirements that were approved in November of 2021 did require separate chutes for organics to make it easier for residents to divert organic waste. So I would say that was probably the biggest win from a new building high-rise perspective of having that in there. Prior to that, we did not require any chutes for organic waste at all. So I would say that was probably our biggest step forward from that perspective. For our existing buildings, we do have a multi-residential program kicking off this year for education, which will actually have us, the hope is to at least have the outreach staff touch every building once every other year, where we would go and proactively provide education similarly to the waste management guide that we have here today, provide kind of a setup in the lobby to try and generate organic waste participation as well, and then have our staff visiting with the superintendents. So we're trying to be more proactive from that perspective from a multi-residential standpoint. And this speaks to, when I was speaking before about our new metrics, that we should have a organics capture rate for multi-res buildings as well as single-family homes, and drive that with more education and with hopefully better designed buildings to assist residents. I would just say that because those were approved in 2021 and we're just at the very beginning of 2024, it might be a little bit of time before we see some of those come into account. Yeah.
I'm not seeing any more questions. We might take it from green bins to blue boxes.
And just apologize as I go back to the presentation and bring it up. Yeah, so item 7.5, again, it's Ryan Kent, Manager of Waste Policy and Planning, to speak to an update on Blue Box transition. So for those today that are here today, as a little bit of background, on April 1st, 2025, the financial and operating responsibility of collecting and managing Blue Box material from eligible properties in Hamilton will be passed along to producers. And as a reminder, we'll just talk about what is included as an eligible property. So that includes what we've spoken about today, single-family homes and multi-residential buildings, in addition to seasonal dwellings, public and private schools, specified retirement long-term care homes. So here in Hamilton, we've got 2 nonprofit ones, so those would be captured in that, and specified public spaces. What is not included in that list of eligible properties are municipal buildings such as City Hall, where we are today, businesses, and places of worship. A report will be coming forward to the Public Works Committee, currently scheduled for April 2nd, to determine if the city will continue providing Blue Box service during the transition period, which a reminder of that date is from April 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2025. Staff have developed a communication plan that will be implemented this year in 2024 to keep stakeholders up to date. Obviously, the greatest stakeholder here are residents, so that they understand what's happening for the program. And staff will bring a report to Public Works Committee later this year to determine if the city will continue to collect Blue Box material at depots during the transition period. And I will pause again to see if anyone has any questions on Blue Box transition.
Yeah, seeing Lori and Councillor Tattison, and then, oh yeah, now I can see Heather.
Are we already, or are we currently collecting from businesses and churches? Because I know some churches take part, and I certainly know some businesses take part, so we leave them in the lurch?
So through the chair, to answer your question about who we do collect from, yes, so over the last number of months, we've had staff go out onto the curb and see what these non-eligible properties are actually putting out at the curb. And yes, we do have some churches that are participating in the program. I would say that the majority of the non-eligibles are businesses throughout the city, but we have a very good sense now of what that looks like currently. And sorry, your second question?
So I'm just wondering what happens when we transition. Are we not going to be collecting that anymore?
So the report that will come forward to Public Works Committee there will be a decision by council to determine whether or not we will continue that service. Okay. Yeah. And that report is only during the transition period, which is up to the end of December 2025.
Okay.
Okay. Just going down to, I guess it's page 2, and I see it says public and private schools. I'm just wondering, like, do we, again, similar question, do we collect from the public schools currently?
Through the chair, currently, we do not. We have in the past, but we currently do not.
Okay, so with the new operating responsibilities, it's going to be passed on to the schools to do that. Is that going to be mandated by the province, do you know?
Through the chair, so it'll be producers that will be responsible for collecting from the schools and setting up that, as opposed to the schools themselves. I
Okay,
believe,
so
yeah.
the producers are the people that make the materials that we buy and so forth, and then in the green bin that's out by a school, that'll be picked up and that cost will be put back on the, I guess, the stores and, so, okay, thanks.
Sorry, I think you might have said green bin through the chair, but I think you meant blue box.
No, sorry. I meant in terms of a school, there's a huge green box that's got recycling in it.
Oh, okay.
Like okay, so yeah, so
Fair enough,
there's a
yeah.
green bin.
Just
green
want to make
box.
sure we were all on the same page as what we were talking
So,
about. Okay.
so it is like, it's a recycling bin at a school, is a huge green
Okay.
box, I guess, or bin that all the cardboard boxes and all the paper and all the excess stuff goes into, and that's gonna be put back, so that will be captured better. And then the blue boxes in schools will be put on to, I'm just trying to figure out, because it's not collected in schools.
So through the chair, Angela Story, Director of Waste. So what will happen, because this municipality is not currently set up to collect any waste from schools, Ryan mentioned in the past we've had agreements with the Catholic School Board, so the public school board's been collecting their own, responsible for collecting their own for a long time. So what will happen is when transition ends, which is January 1st, 2026, schools will have the ability to register as an eligible property with the group leading the Blue Box transition for the province to get on to that collection of the recyclables. So they should see minimal change, but they should see a reduction in their costs because they should be contracting with the new provincial or producer contractor to be collecting that recyclable part, and then they would only be on their own to try to find somebody to continue their green bin waste or their garbage waste. But it'll start in 2026 for them.
Thanks for that clarity.
Do we have other questions on the blue box transition? Yeah, Heather.
Not so much a question. I just want to add something. I go into a lot of schools and work with them a lot. So I just want to let everyone in this group know that the public school boards don't have green bin. They don't have access to green bins right now. So they're organic waste unless the kids bring it home. Some schools do a boomerang lunch where they bring it home and compost at home. Otherwise, it all goes to landfill, all the organic waste.
Thank you for that comment, Heather. And I think fitting that we're talking about schools, our next is education and outreach, and potentially where those connections can be made or where those take-home programs can kind of keep going. So with that transition, I'll throw it back to our Director of Policy.
Thank you for that segue. So yes, through the chair, again, Ryan Kent, Manager of Waste Policy and Planning. Item 7.6 is promotion and education update. So the first, there are three topics that I'm going to talk about today for promotion and education. The first is off-campus student housing education. As a reminder, so staff introduced a campaign to educate McMaster and Mohawk students moving into off-campus housing on proper waste management practices. This was done at the end of last summer, so in August. And we saw some good results from that. There were noticeable improvements throughout the fall. Staff has seen some issues arise around McMaster again in January, which has required some assistance from our waste bylaw group to make regular visits, to re-educate with postcards and calendars, and for some extreme situations, issuing orders to students and landlords. What we will be doing in 2024, which is something that we were planning on doing previously as part of our work plan, was to have an education campaign to continue and focus on educating students that are moving out of off-campus housing. So staff are currently working with both schools, Mohawk and McMaster, on a 2024 campaign, which will commence in March and will include posts on social media from both the city as well as those schools, ads on transit shelters around both campuses, posters and booths at McMaster campus, and education piece that will be most likely mailed or delivered to the houses that we've confirmed as being off-campus housing. Just here you'll see the booths that we did set up last year at the beginning of the school year to educate students at both McMaster and Mohawk. The second promotion and education update has to do with our Waste Reduction Week open house, which was done last October the 21st. It was to celebrate Waste Reduction Week, and staff hosted an open house at the city's central composting facility, so our CCF, as well as the material recycling facility, or our MRF, on a Saturday. We had 90 attendees from the public with a range of ages, and I think staff were very happy with the turnout. It was very positive from everyone that hosted, or everyone that attended, and we are looking to host the next one on April 20th to celebrate Earth Day. I have included a few photos here as part of the open house. The first one on the left there is at the central composting facility. We have an education room where we take school-age students. This is where the tour kind of kicked off. Everyone kind of met there. The next stop that we went to was just down the hall from there, which is the control room at the central composting facility, where we actually looked down on the tipping floor, where residents were able to ask our processing staff questions about the process. They could also look down the tunnels where the composting goes. The next picture you can see below that is at our material recycling facility, where staff answered questions about the MRF, the process, and they were able to walk around a little bit. It was roped off. They couldn't go wherever they wanted, but they were able to get a pretty good sense of the operation there. And then the last picture on the slide was probably the most popular for our younger attendees, where they got to get up close and personal with some of our waste collection vehicles and vehicles used for downtown cleanliness. And some of them were even able to honk the horn on the big trucks, which was a very popular stop for them. So we thought it was a great event, and we wanted to make sure that we brought it to this committee, and to let you know that we will be planning another one in April for Earth Day. And the last item I just wanted to provide was education/safety campaigns. So in late 2023, we did have a safety campaign on weight limits for our waste collectors. You can see the caption there being "heavy waste will be left in place." We will be moving forward in 2024 away from safety campaign and more into education, and that'll be focused on litter reduction. I know that's been a popular topic at some meetings, so that'll happen starting in the second quarter of this year, including social media posts. We are creating a reel and advertising on print, digital, and radio, and hopefully television. One thing we wanted to do, because we do have some new members here today, was talk about some of our previous safety campaigns, so I'll just go over them very quickly. The first one that we did a couple years ago was Stay Safe, Leave Space, which is basically educating the residents on maneuvering around waste collection vehicles, giving space for the operators and the vehicles. The second one was Clear a Safe Space for Your Waste, which is around winter time. We haven't had to really focus on that too much this year because we haven't had much of a winter, but making sure that residents aren't putting materials on top of snowbanks, behind snowbanks, and these types of things. The third being Keep Safe and Separate Sharp Waste. Obviously, it's a safety hazard if waste collectors have glass and knives and other things that could injure them in the waste, so we had a program about that, or a campaign about that. And the last one was about wrapping mattresses, so all mattresses and box springs requiring to be wrapped, basically to make sure that the waste collectors did not have to deal with bed bugs, which could be a safety problem for them. And that is the last slide on promotion education, so I'll be happy to take any questions on this item.
Okay, through the chair. You were talking about the education for the students.
Correct.
Now that you have this brochure, this might be worthwhile holding some back and, introducing this to the students in the fall. Because this kind of outlines our programs pretty neatly. Yeah.
Sorry, through the chair, Kevin, so you mean the Mohawk and, right. So when we were doing the education in the August, we did provide a waste calendar to each of those households. So that was an important thing. They will be getting that in the mail. Every household will be getting those along with the trash tags. So by default, they'll get that, and we'll be giving additional education to each one of those households that we know are for off-campus housing. So they will absolutely get one of those along with the trash tags mailed to each one of those households for sure.
I was just thinking, it's because the students transition in late August. Like,
yes.
How can we, like, this gets mailed in the spring, but how can we capture that second cycle of occupancy, I'll call it?
Most likely, through the chair, we'll be doing it in the same fashion that we did this past year. So in August, when we did go out there to each, I don't know if it will be necessarily us visiting each one of those households, but definitely mailing something to each one of those. And we do feel that staff feels that we've got a pretty good list of what those households are. So it makes it a little bit easier for us to follow up and provide additional education as opposed to just the guide that they get. Angela?
Yeah, and just through the chair, Kevin, so we sent a second set to everyone that was registered as a student household, plus with our enforcement group who's had a lot of interaction with the student households in the past. If they had like hot lists of kind of maybe some areas that had struggled in the past, we made sure that we met with them in person and gave them the information. It's really good. When the delegate from the Ainsley Wood neighborhood came in the spring concerned about move in and move out, we met with her and the association also just to see what they thought. And the number one thing was please re-give the package materials because there is a chance it's been lost, it's been recycled, they took it with them, the trash tags are gone. So we basically just did a reset with those about 2,500 properties at that time.
Thanks, Peter. Heather?
The waste that's collected from schools by third parties, does that still go to the Glanbrook landfill site or does it go somewhere else?
Through the chair, no, it would be collected by a private waste contractor, so it would be taken to wherever they happen to dispose of their material, which would not be the Glanbrook landfill.
Any follow-up on that, Heather? No? Okay. Yeah, Lori.
Are we bringing back Swaparama in the Mac area? That was at the end of the school year. People could just put everything out and neighbors and everyone would go around and take anything that they wanted without being charged with scavenging.
Through the chair, that has not been thought of as part of the strategy to reduce that material at the curb.
I'm still using my coffee grinder.
Pardon me?
I'm still using the coffee grinder that I got.
Oh, yes, no, that hasn't been something that we've considered as part of that strategy. We've really been focusing on proper education because we've seen a lot of piles of bulk waste,
no.
for example, goes out and nobody calls to say that there's bulk that needs to be collected. Or extra garbage goes out and they don't have garbage tags on them and these types of things. So we're really focusing on making sure that they do the right thing as opposed to having perhaps an enhanced program in that particular area.
Yeah, I'm seeing lots of hands. Why don't we start with Councillor Tadison as the first time, and then we'll go back to you, Heather.
Just any thoughts in terms of the student education going up to Redeemer College and working with that group?
So through the chair, we haven't heard of any concerns around Redeemer College of, a lot of off-campus student housing being an issue. It was definitely brought to our attention from neighborhood associations about McMaster predominantly, and then somewhat Mohawk, but those concerns haven't been brought to myself or anyone else, so that's why it hasn't been a focus to this point.
Yeah, and through the chair to Councillor Tadison, we did, in addition to getting all of the properties that were registered as student houses, we then looked back into those enforcement or education files and kind of spot checked those. So Joel here from Collections, his waste bylaw enforcement team, they did do a few drops around Redeemer, but they definitely didn't notice a proactive or a reactive issue in that area. Similar to, I believe there's like a Brock campus down in Stony Creek. So from there right now, we just started with the big two.
Okay, thanks for that. And then jumping to another topic that you mentioned about proper education, and I'm all about starting young for compliance. What kind of FT is dedicated inside your division to, developing curriculum-based materials for either classroom presentations or an assembly at school, or for a school trip to come and see that neat facility?
Yeah, through the chair. So in the Waste Management Division, we have a group called the Community Outreach Group. So we have one project manager there. We have a community program analyst that helps mostly with the design of the material, and we work with communications and corporate graphic design on those. And we have two outreach coordinators. So the outreach coordinators are really the people that go out, whether it's Ryan referenced before, green bin setups in multi-res buildings, doing gold box audits like Peter referenced, doing the school education. So in their work plan, there's two coordinators, Councillor Tadison, who are responsible for the school program in addition to the other things that take them out of the office.
Thank you for that. And do you have any data on like how many classrooms come to visit, or how many trips they actually go out and do and get out there inside the public schools?
So through the chair, we aren't in the school as much. At one point we were, since COVID that hasn't come back. However, we do make pretty good use over the last year or two of the education room that's at the central composting facility. I was trying to remember off the top of my head how many classroom or classes we had attend. I want to say it was somewhere around 50 last year, but I'd have to double check that for you, so I apologize. But we do also have a virtual classroom, which was set up during COVID. We found that become, we did see a big spike in that, and then it's decreased considerably since COVID. I guess we've gotten back to a little bit more of a normal life. So I would say that has decreased significantly by how many staff or students are actually using it. But conversely, we've seen a lot more in school coming into the composting facility.
And just final question on that, how do you advertise to the school board that those trips are available so teachers are aware of that?
So through the chair, getting back to Angela's point about our outreach coordinator, we have one that proactively calls a lot of the schools or emails. We've got a pretty good database of the local schools, teachers, and who those contacts are in the different schools. So he basically has a couple of different times of the year where they're contacted, and then they say, yes, we're interested, no, we're not. So it's the last couple of years, it's seen a good uptick, yeah.
Thank you very much. Oh,
Yeah, sure. And just through the chair, adding to that, we have a really decent return rate of those classrooms. So if a teacher's teaching grade 4 and they're teaching grade 4 next year, like sometimes they are proactively reaching out to us, asking when we're starting those presentations as well, which is positive. And I just took a peek. It's not school specific, Councillor Taddison, but in our scorecard for the end of 2023, our target for outreach presentation attendees, so it could be who we visited with at fairs, we did in neighborhood meetings, we did online virtual sessions. The target was just over 12,000 and we engaged just over 15,000.
thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Taddison. Heather, did you want to ask some more follow-up questions?
I had a quick follow-up to what Lori was saying about McMaster. Last school year, there was a group in their Mac Changers program who tried to relaunch a program like that to pass items from like one student house to another and maybe even store them over the summer so that when there's an influx of students in September, they could get things. I'm not sure if they managed to launch it the way they were hoping, but they were trying to solve that and get it as a regular ongoing program there.
Just one follow-up question. It's a bit of a bugaboo around my area. It's the mattresses and the waste. Does this Hamilton provide any support for people like looking to wrap an actual like a king-size mattress? Like how does somebody do that?
Hello, hello. Joel McCormick, Manager Waste Collections. So when the program changed, we did provide information and education to the residents through our outreach on how to manage their wrapping of their mattresses and box springs. That information is on the website, and it's also available when residents call in to book their bulk waste and or go online to book their bulk waste. Basically, the tips are to if you're wrapping your mattress, what works really well is plastic, like drop sheets that are used for painting. You can get those at any type of, we'll say, dollar store or type of hardware store, and taking, would it be tape or duct tape, and closing it up like that. That is usually the best way of going about it. Or if there's a new mattress, using the wrap that comes from the new mattress and just putting the old mattress back into there, and then putting it at the curb on their designated collection day.
Okay, so the way I understand it then, you just put it out with the regular collection day and then someone from a different truck picks it up, or does the actual truck pick that up?
Through the chair. So it's usually a different truck. So it's usually what we have is a bulk truck that goes around to the properties that have scheduled collections for that day, and then they will pick up that waste that has been identified through the scheduling, whether it's through the CCC or the online scheduling.
Thanks for that. So no reason for people to just be dumping their stuff at the side of the road. It can be picked up from their front yard in a timely way, as long as they take 5 or 6 minutes to actually prepare it properly. Thank you.
Not seeing other education awareness questions. We're moving on to a pretty general next topic, so if they come back, it's not like we're out of scope.
All right, I'll move along to our last item, item 7.7, which is the Solid Waste Management Master Plan. So an update on what we've already touched on a couple of times today, which is the development of the new Solid Waste Management Master Plan for the City of Hamilton. So the scope of work has been developed so that a request for proposal can be released. There's a slight delay in this because we are not allowed to release it until the approval of the capital budget, which will hopefully be happening later this month. Some of the key project milestones is that we hope that request for proposal goes out in March. We want the work to be awarded by July, the work to be completed by end of February 2025, and a report plan to go to Public Works Committee in April of 2025. You'll remember first presentation we had today was on Angela about the asset management plan, and there was a delay date of July 2025 about determining future levels of service. So this is all, you know, the thinking here is making sure that that all aligns so that we've got the master plan figured out and then we can provide those future levels of service. The next number of slides I have are action items related to the previous master plan update that was in 2020. So I will go through these today, especially for a reminder, but also for some of our new members to understand what's actually included in this. Moving forward, I will provide this at all of the Waste Management Subcommittee meetings, but they will most likely be a consent item so that if staff or if committee members want to look at it, it will be provided. And if you want to have any discussion about it, we can certainly do that. So with that being said, the first items that we have here are in kind of this green shaded area, which are new items that were determined through the process of that update in 2020. So I'm going to go through some of them relatively quickly. First items, the first four there are all completed. The first was a policy on intermunicipal partnerships. The second was basically a policy that allows staff to support community reduce and reuse programs. The third one was increase curbside enforcement, and the fourth was update our single-family waste audit methodology. Moving along to our items that are progressing, that have not been complete as of yet, our development options for the material recycling facility, obviously with Blue Box transition, determining what we do with that building is important. You'll see next is waste performance metrics, which we've already talked about today, establishing what those look like and using those to inform the new master plan and confirm those through that process. Investigation into construction and demolition waste. Existing program improvements. This takes into consideration three main programs: business recognition, waste diversion at special events, and school education. School education has been completed. Waste diversion at special events, we've just basically determined what that plan is, and it's starting this year. And business recognition should be complete by, it says Q2 2024 is when it should be implemented. The next item is a trash tag program analysis. So staff are looking at that right now. We currently have finished a round of waste audits to support that program and look at how that program is actually running. And then the last two items are preparation for the next waste collection contract, which is until 2028. The biggest piece of that we're looking at right now is a feasibility study on using carts for garbage, which we will provide an update to this group at a later date. And then the last item is green procurement, and what we were looking for guidance on that was really federal regulation. However, staff is going to have to look at a new way of looking at that based on recent issues with federal regulation in regards to plastic waste. These next two slides are great. The items are grayed out because they were items that were on our work plan but supported the master plan. We've talked about these a couple already. So multi-residential data gathering, which has been completed, new waste design requirements. The third is single-use plastic strategy, which has already been created. However, this is just finishing the action items that are related to that. Next item is route optimization software. Blue Box transition, we've spoken about that already, so that's obviously ongoing. Central composting facility capacity, so looking at how to manage that program moving forward. We will have an update on that at the next meeting, including what would be the most likely, the best options for us moving forward. Transfer station, community recycling center capacity, and I believe the last is Glanbrook landfill development. With that being said, I will stop sharing, as that is the last slide in the presentation, and look to see if there are any questions on the master plan.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks. I'm looking through this, and forgive me if I'm not seeing it, but is there a strategy for dealing with litter Like, I know it's like Earth Day and so forth, and I know there is a strategy, but can we highlight that?
Yeah, through the chair, to Councillor Tattison. So this document is from our 2020, last 5 years of our existing master plan that we were updating. So these are specific to those. The citywide litter review enhancement report will come to budget on Thursday. As soon as we have what the approved program will be going forward, Ryan mentioned they'll be doing education campaigns related to litter coming up. We just need to know what that program is going to look like. And then we'll also be preparing some educational documents so people know how to report litter, handle litter, et cetera. But that's coming later this week.
Thank you.
Through the chair, this is more just a general observation I saw. At the Upper Ottawa Street facility, I noticed a lot of people don't back in. You know how you're supposed to back in and empty? Yeah, you know exactly what's happening. People are just pulling, dropping, and it's not following the rules, and it's causing traffic flow and risk, I'll call it. Is there any thought of actually, so we had a similar problem where I work, where we just put up signs back into your parking spots. So I don't know, yeah.
Through the chair, Rob Conley, Manager of Recycling and Waste Disposal. So yeah, we are dealing with the operations contractor and pass that message on to residents that the attendants will ask them to back in, but we are also looking at if there's any other educational materials we can use to help in that situation. But it is documented that we are passing that through the attendants to suggest that they back in. It's especially problematic in that area with trailers. Yeah.
This one's more general for the landfill site. So a cell gets used up, and then it gets basically capped and recycled. And then basically we take the waste gases off it, and the cell would probably decompose over time. As we're trying to keep our landfill longer, is there any thoughts that we could recycle a partial cell in the future to try and extend the life?
Through the chair, so just to clarify, you mean like mining the waste that's there and taking out? Sorry, okay.
So if a cell's used up, it's
Correct.
just there, let's just say it compacts because the gases.
It settles, yes.
Yeah, and could we re-add to that cell?
That's a normal operating procedure. So basically, the landfill is, through survey, we see what elevation it's at. And after an area has sat for a number of years, for example, stages 1 and 2, we moved into stage 3. We're now back in stages 1 and 2, refilling areas that we left a certain amount of area on top for a contingency, which is what we're using now. But through survey, realize that some of the areas have settled in areas, so we'll recapture that, yes.
Just a couple of questions. Just on the master plan. So I don't know what we're asking for in the master plan, but I'm just wondering if it may be optimistic for a 7-month turnaround with, I would assume, some type of public consultation attached to it.
Yeah, through the chair. I would say that, yeah, I agree with you, Peter, that it is a fairly aggressive schedule. I think that staff have done a lot of good background work to help support that. So including already determining what we think the metrics should be. I would say the public education is still something, or sorry, public consultation is still something that we need to do. But I would say that other work that we're doing is feasibility studying on what we think should happen with the central composting facility and composting in the future. That work is well underway. Garbage cart feasibility study, all these pieces that what I've seen from other municipalities, sometimes that's part of the master plan and they hire someone to do that. But I think that we've set ourselves up with all this good data and information to hopefully make that process move a little bit smoother. But I do understand, yeah, some master plans take years. Some master plans sorry. Some master plans, though, I think, break it down into a lot of different projects and require that. So I am aware of it. I think we as staff are aware of it, but we also think that we've done a lot of work in the background to hopefully make the process move along a little bit smoother.
You know, that's helpful. I think certainly, you know, not knowing that side of things, and certainly I think there's, given the amount of recent master plans by municipalities, Guelph, Ottawa, moving forward, it seems to me we can likely piggyback off of work that's already been done. That's, yeah, okay. One additional question I had just on the tracking side of things. So I understand this is sort of the 2020 solid waste master plan. Is there any value in adding in, because I'm assuming like the non-eligible recycling collection, whether we continue to do that, is it worth adding some of those items that may be more pressing with the blue box transition? I know you've got the MRF side in there, but is there any worth in including some of the things like that decision around non-eligible?
So including, sorry, through the chair, including the work that's more pressing in our work plan of the master plan item.
Yeah.
So I would say that all of our work plans have a considerable amount of pressing items such as legislative changes. So the master plan action items we definitely have, that gives us direction as to exactly what we're supposed to be doing, but we also have staff resources dedicated strictly to blue box transition as well, right? So I would say that we do a very good balancing act of things that come up that we didn't plan for in 2020 versus what needs to get completed as part of that process.
And one last question, I guess, and this sort of fits with a question of the agenda / this list is, and I'm not totally clear on necessarily what comes to this group for advice and feedback and what comes for, I'm assuming nothing comes to this committee for decisions because that's made by Public Works, but I'm just trying to understand, when do we know what's going to come for advice, admission, or feedback? When do we know whether it's just informational or otherwise?
Sure, through the chair, Angela Story, Director of Waste Management. So we do have the terms of reference linked today because we have to update it due to numbers. So you'll see a little bit of information in there, Peter. Okay. But realistically, what we have to be cautious of is typically the decisions that need to be made are big. And so it is understood that we wouldn't make them at this committee, as you said, but we would, what we want to do in some of those instances, ineligibles might be a good example, something with the master plan, we'll be doing workshops with this group as part of the master plan, is get the feedback here so that it can educate our recommendation and alternatives so that when it goes to committee, actual Public Works Committee, we would have the support of the subcommittee in sending those forward. It's a really positive thing that our meetings are webcast on YouTube. It's a positive thing that the minutes are stored on the city's website forever. They didn't used to be that way. So we maybe would have had discussions in some of these settings because it really didn't leave the room and it was, more brainstorming and those kind of things. Here today, we wouldn't want to identify some of the decisions that we're planning on bringing forward and then usurping that report that's going to come at a different month later on. So typically we're providing updates, Peter, on our projects, but from time to time we will definitely be seeking input so that it can help us form our recommendation reports to go forward.
Thanks, Peter. I know, Heather, you had your hand up earlier.
It's been addressed. It was just about the public consultation and the role of this committee in the master plan.
Perfect. Councillor Chattison, can I throw the chair to you for a second? There we are.
Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Sure. Yeah, similar, just wondering, could we get a quick overview of what the public consultation plans are for the solid waste management master plan? I think just a couple of folks have asked about that. Just, I know, here's what our current plan is, and I know that was the purpose of the update, was to more so talk about the plan we're doing for the next couple of years. But I'm sensing that it's sparked for a lot of folks questions on the renewal, understanding just an overview, but could we get kind of like, in this month we're hoping to do this, and this month we're hoping to do this. Already that was in the slideshow, but just more of the public feedback piece as opposed to the consultant's work plan.
So through the chair, I would expect to have a more detailed, staff would expect to have a more detailed understanding once we do get the proposals back, and we are provided with what that looks like on a month-to-month basis, based on what comes back from whoever is hired to do that work. But I'd also say other things would impact that, for example, how quickly things get approved so that we can move forward with actually doing that work, right? So I think that's another important piece here as well. So I don't have a detailed list or a detailed schedule as to, in September, we're going to have a survey go out citywide. But I would definitely expect something like that to be happening fairly early on in the process so that we could have those results and they could inform the decisions that are made by Public Works Committee and from on that particular master plan. So I don't have a detailed list, but as has already been mentioned by Peter, it's aggressive, so I wouldn't expect things to be happening in February of 2025 when things need to be done. So it's a tight timeline. I would expect it to be happening later this year, for sure.
Just a follow-up there is I was at a really cool event in Ward 13 just this past weekend, a repair cafe, local groups putting it on, doing mending, doing that type of stuff, getting into this idea of circularity. And they were doing a citizen-led consultation, so nothing to do kind of with the city's formal feedback on the biodiversity action plan, saying, hey, what happens when we ask folks who are coming to mend their gardening tools and that stuff about biodiversity, something they're not necessarily showing up for, and getting some of the feedback on that plan. If there are community events like this, I know our outreach team is stretched with everything they're going on, but is there some capacity in the development of the solid waste management master plan where if community groups are having events that are related to waste or related to these types of things, where there might be a possibility of kind of teasing out the idea that we're doing a solid waste management master plan or doing kind of community tabling at like-minded events regarding some of these pieces, or to kind of scope it out in a way that makes sense for where we're at in the work, but also not using new resources versus allocating existing, just getting a sense of what capacity may exist.
Yeah, through the chair, the outreach team is always looking at events where we can have a table or this or that, right? So we do have right now the staff has looked at what they need to do for 2024, where there are those opportunities. So obviously you use the term stretch thin. I would say, I don't know if we're stretched thin, we're maybe stretched the perfect amount right now. So the staff has opportunities to increase that, and we're looking for those opportunities all the time. And that's part of the work plan right now. Make sure that we attend events. Obviously the message would change once we have a master plan, as opposed to coming to teach or educate residents about waste from a more general perspective. But it would be helpful for us to have a better understanding of all those different events so that we could certainly have them. And it looks like Andrew
Yeah,
wants to
and
join in.
thank you, and that's great. And through the chair, it's an excellent question. One of the things that we may struggle with the most would be knowing what events are happening. So typically, it's where have we been before, because we have those lists, and it would be using the the special events advisory team, like the SEAT process, because formal applications for events come in. However, we know there are events that don't trigger the SEAT process. So I mean, open call here if you have items for consideration. We just ask, we have some collective agreements that we have to stay within, et cetera. So the more notice we have, the better able we are to schedule and go from there. But we're really excited. We still look at post-COVID recovery, and we're looking at 2024 as being a pre-COVID level for us. So the more we can get out, the better, and we'll try to figure it out. We have a couple of people in our outreach team, but we have a number of people on our management team and our leadership team and our program specialists that are able to get out and do that work as well.
Thanks. I'll take back the chair, and I'll see if other folks want to get on the list. Yeah, Councillor Tassin. Thank you.
Just recognizing the value of land these days, and you're doing an upcoming presentation on assets soon. Will you be covering anything on the topic, I guess, the Ottawa Street landfill site that's now closed? Anything, any possibilities for reclamation or any opportunities there? And you can, if it's coming down later, just let me know.
Through the chair, right now, the Upper Ottawa site actually has a wildlife sanctuary on the top of it. So that area cannot be disturbed for 20 years. So there will be no changing of that area. And that's actually on top of the where the active fill was many years ago. As far as the yard itself, the yard is occupied by the forestry area, so they're using it for a nursery. So there's not really any other opportunities at this time to do something with that site. So we just, it's within our monitoring for, because it still has a active environmental compliance approval on it. So other than that, monitoring of that site, we're just maintaining it as is for now. And the only other asset that's on there, it has an active leachate collection system.
Thanks so much, and probably sharing that publicly more often would help me and my people that drive by there and see the, ski hill opportunities and so forth.
Thanks, everyone. Not seeing anyone else hoping to get on the speakers list for the 7.7, which then I think means, could I ask for a mover and a seconder to receive all of these reports that we've just been getting? Yeah, thank you, Kevin and Lori. And then we can call for just a show of hands to, again, this is just receiving the presentations we just had. That carries 6-0. Thank you, everyone. We're just moving on. We have one other thing left to do today before adjournment, and that is talk about our terms of reference. Director Story, are you introducing this item? Or we're just we've all read it, it's on the agenda, or I think a bit of an overview may help, if that's okay. Oh, thank you, Jessica. And just while we're doing that, I'm not your regular chair. I'm filling in today, but I think there's been a lot of questions about, well, how do I participate on this committee? Because we do have some new members. And I think going through the terms of reference is also a good chance to hear about those questions or ask those questions as well, where we're talking about the changes, because I think the changes are mostly housekeeping, but it's a chance to see what that process is. And I know the next spot on our agenda is also notices of motion. And so maybe in going through the terms of reference, if it would be possible, if I can add this in, would staff just be able to talk about generally notices of motion? What do you, if a committee member wanted to bring something forward, what's the expectation for doing that process, communicating with staff, getting it on the agenda, just as we're doing a bit of an onboarding at the same time we're going through our agenda today, thinking that'd be a helpful overview in addition to the terms of reference.
Sure, maybe I'll start, and folks from clerks, you can maybe help me if there's anything there. So the purpose for adding the terms of reference onto the agenda today was to update the membership information, because we do have the ability now to have more public members, which you see present. Kevin's been holding down the fort for the last year for us. So it's a pleasure to have more faces around the table that are interested in waste in our city. So we thank you for that. So just looking at the terms of reference here, statement of purpose. So we're assisting with the implementation of the Solid Waste Management Master Plan. And that's why in every meeting, there will be an agenda item related to things we're already working on for the Solid Waste Management Master Plan, and of course the items that we're going to be going forward with. So the mandate is to give overall guidance and direction during the implementation and maintenance of the master plan, give overall guidance during the preparation and implementation of the next master plan and its initiatives, and advise council through the Public Works Committee of the progress and receive feedback, advice, and direction as appropriate. So those were Peter's questions earlier. We advise to council through the Public Works Committee, as it says here under 1.4. We are responsible, we're going to follow the Procedural Bylaw and Advisory Committee Handbook, which I know there's been a lot of work on in the last couple of years, getting up to date as well. The membership, as we noted, up to 3 members of City Council and 3 citizen members. You can see the change here is 4 citizen members in this term, which again we appreciate. So the 6 turns to a 7. All members will coincide with the term of council. So right now, with the last election, it did take a little while to get all of the committees organized. So that's why we're starting in 2024, but it would finish up at the end of 2026 with this council term. And we're hoping to meet every other month-ish, typically 4 times a year. We take a little bit of time off in the summer for everybody to enjoy that time. Councillor Francis is not here today, but as the chair or as the vice chair, Councillor Wilson, we're happy to host a meeting at the call of the chair, specifically as we go through this aggressive schedule for the master plan coming up. You may see some, not last minute meetings, but just added meetings to the schedule so that we can accomplish some of that engagement. On the notice of motion piece, thank you for bringing that up, Councillor Wilson. We haven't had a notice of motion before at this committee, so that's a really great question. I suspect with our friends here from clerks, we would follow the same routine that we would at the other committees. So a motion would be a notice of motion in meeting number 1. It would become an actual motion in meeting number 2. If something was pressing, it could be walked on as a motion that day on the floor at the meeting. We are happy as your staff resources to help prepare any notices of motion or motions themselves. Happy to, let clerks know that we're going to be working on something, or let us know and we can let them know. Either way would work. I hope that helps.
I think it hopefully does, because I know a lot of folks were asking those questions, and I think all of our committees work a little differently, just given that this one is so sometimes operational at times. Like, we're very focused on a master plan. Just wanted to let folks know that some of those opportunities do still exist. They may look a little different than they do in, say, another committee, but if we have a report, say, when we get to the solid waste management master plan, it's possible for this committee, we may choose just to take the report, but we could, for example, make a recommendation to Public Works Committee when they're receiving that report. That might be something we see. We could also ask for information via motions. I mean, so far that's worked very well by just asking questions, and staff have been following up. But if we wanted to formalize that process of requesting information, that might be something else folks could think about. Just trying to do a bit of onboarding in our kind of first meeting with the new folks, but I will admit that I didn't have an onboarding agenda. So I don't know if folks have any questions about the terms of reference as we've seen them, or just kind of opening that up to also kind of participation in the committee, just making sure folks feel like they're ready to go for this term, or if they do have questions, happy to be the person you email and I can help you get to the right spot. I'm sure Director Story and our clerks team, Jessica, supporting with this committee, also very happy to get those questions if you don't want to ask them online today. But gonna kind of do a call, see if we have questions on terms. Yeah, Peter.
Sorry, this may be another dumb comment, but I just wonder, the statement of purpose may seem to get dated quite quickly if we are moving towards a new master plan. Is there, I guess my question is, the statement of purpose, is there a need for a date? Can we not just say, to assist the City of Hamilton with the implementation of the council-approved waste management master plan and actions? Yeah. Just a small change, yeah. Just so it doesn't become dated all the time.
Through the chair, maybe we could practice making a motion to amend the terms of reference.
Oh, sure, we can do that. So that's going to be moved by Peter, and I'm seeing a smile from Lori. Are you okay to second that, Lori? There we go. And we've practiced it. There we go. We've used some of those rules of procedure there. And then, yeah, while that change is being made, I'm going to try and do 2 things at once here, but just kind of getting a sense of folks, if they have other questions, for once we've done this, if other folks would be looking to get on the list.
Did you want to just, sorry. Could I just have you repeat that again? Sorry.
I think you're really just taking away, with the implementation of the council-approved solid waste master plan, and I don't think you need to say action item or 2020 solid waste master, whatever the abbreviation is, because I'm going to get it wrong. I wonder if you can just say again, council-approved action items or the solid waste master plan.
Yeah, and through the chair, that's why both were referenced, because there are 2. One was an actual master plan and one was the update to and doing the operational items. So I think by removing the dates, it just means anything that's currently approved and active, those are the ones that we're working on implementing. Good suggestion, thank you.
Heather, just checking to see if you're okay with that, maybe through our clerks team. I just can't see if you have a hand up right now.
Yeah, all good.
Perfect. Then once we're ready to go on that, and I think we're almost there, we'll call for a vote. And so that was moved by Peter, seconded by Lori to amend the terms of reference as we see here, just so that we're not referencing the specific plan, but as opposed to whatever the current plan is, because this committee exists in that way. And whenever we're ready, we'll take that down and we can call for a vote just so we can see everyone's hands. But yeah, I think we're ready to call for a vote. If we can do thumbs up, thumbs down to indicate how we're feeling, if you're okay to approve those changes. Heather, yep, that's good. So that carries 6-0. And then exact same thing, now that it's been amended, we're gonna still borrow you, Peter and Lori, to approve it as amended. So show of hands again if we're okay to approve those changes that we just made. And there we are. Heather, are you okay to approve the, yep, seeing that. Another 6-0. Thank you, everyone. I may be, so, and then kind of at the end, so we did our procedural bit at the beginning. I'll just kind of go over them. We don't have anything today, but just so folks understand the general flow of a meeting, this is where we do notices of motion. So if you had something you weren't quite ready to go with, or you had been workshopping, we wouldn't do it today, but you'd introduce it. And then at our next meeting, we'd deal with it. Motions for those things that got on early, and we had that notice. And then if we have any general information or other business, that's generally where we would hear an update from our staff team if there's any other kind of information, although typically those just appear on the agenda. Oh, but we do have one today.
Great. Through the chair, I just wanted to open an invite to any of the members if they wanted to come down and see the composting facility, the material recycling facility. I know Lori did attend our open house back in the fall, so she can come back again and see behind the yellow line. And so if anybody is interested in doing that, just reach out to myself or Ryan or the clerk's office and we can set that up.
Everyone would be going?
Through the chair, we can do individual or we can do a group. So Councillor Wilson and Councillor Taddison came as part of the on this committee before and new to council. Peter's seen it a couple of times, but it looks pretty much the same, Peter, than the last time you were there, but you're welcome to come again. Kevin's seen it a few times as well. But anybody, Heather, I'm not sure if you've been down lately, but just happy to have anybody down if you want to take a peek. We just have to clean up the dust a little bit and it'd be good to go.
Thanks, Director Story. Well, that brings us to the last item on our agenda, which is adjournment. And so if I can grab a mover and a seconder to do that, congrats on our first meeting, everyone. So that's moved by Peter and seconded by Lori. All in favor of adjourning? And that carries 6-0. Thank you, everyone, for our first meeting of 2024. Again, if you have questions, you're thinking about how to get involved in the committee, you want to follow something up, feel free to get in touch with either our support staff or myself or our chair, Councillor Francis. We'd be happy to help guide you into how to collaborate in this work, and really excited to have everyone. Thanks so much.